Chapter 14. Busted. Something clicked. Metal on metal. I opened my eyes and looked into the barrel of a rifle aimed at my head. Holding it was a man in strange garb. He looked like a combination astronaut and frogman. It took 5 seconds for me to realize he was a policeman. It's all over, I said to myself, rising from the bed. I wasn't alone in my fear. All 25 of our group at Spawn's Ranch that August morning, 1 week after the Tate LaBianca slayings, were experiencing the same treatment at that moment. A 200-man tactical police force, including the famous SWAT group, swept down upon the ranch. They came in trucks, cars, helicopters, decked out in combat gear and camouflage, catching us completely by surprise. Our ragtag gang was no match for them, 24-hour guard or not. Indeed, we were unable to offer any significant resistance. Charlie and Danny, a motorcycle gang member, were roughed up. So badly, in fact, that Charlie received 2 broken ribs. They rounded us up into the street in front of the movie set and searched the ranch, inch by inch. They tore up the place, breaking down doors, ripping up walls and floors, knocking furniture and belongings every which way. They later took pictures of the wreckage and told reporters we had been living there in that mess. We learned that we were being arrested for auto theft, in connection with the vehicles we've been using to make dune buggies. But they were unable to find much evidence. Nevertheless, we were taken off to jail, the women to Sybil Brand in Los Angeles, and the men to the Los Angeles County Jail. Our children were taken into custody and prepared for placement in foster homes. The Los Angeles Police and Sheriff's Departments were beside themselves with bafflement over the Tate LaBianca murders. Meanwhile, the killers were in custody right under their noses on charges that were quickly dropped. I was in Sybil Brand, a tomb of a prison, for only 72 hours. However, once released, I did not feel free. I continued to be more dead than alive. My feelings were vague, but I was afraid constantly. To my companions, however, I revealed only bravado. I was cocky and arrogant, openly defiant of the law and society. From jail, most of us fled as quickly as possible to Death Valley. The desert was our only hope, but I had other things on my mind. As dead as I was inside, I still wanted my baby. From the last of August through October 9th, I spent all my time working on ways to get him back. I finally found the name and address of the family he had been placed with, and I determined to kidnap him. First, I made several checks on the home, plotting thoroughly its layout and the surrounding neighborhood. My creepy crawling experience paid dividends once again. Early one morning, close to 2 o'clock, Tex drove Sandra and me to the home. I left them in the car and went to the window of the baby's room, prepared to cut the screen and enter. But, oddly, the screen on the window was off, and the window was open. I crawled into the room, and there was my baby. I have no explanation for it, but he was standing up in the crib, watching me enter. He merely stood, looking at me and smiling. I talked in whispers. "Hello, my sweetheart. How are you tonight? Are you glad to see your mommy? I've come to take you home." He remained silent, but continued grinning widely. I made my way in the dark, keeping low, to the kitchen and then to the refrigerator. I opened the door without a sound and took out the baby's bottle. It was full. I went back for my son, and then walked undetected out the front door. I had become a master in crime, a first-rate creepy crawler. We went from there out into the desert, to Barker's Ranch in the Panamint Mountain Range on the fringes of Death Valley. Barker's was a quarter to a half mile from Myers Ranch, which was the one owned by Kathy's grandmother. We moved in and out of those small, run-down ranch houses, and had begun, as well, to dig big holes in the ground, and in the sides of the hills to live in and to store our goods in. Food, weapons, gasoline, and vehicle parts. We had several stolen dune buggies and other vehicles to use for transportation as we waited expectantly for the police to link the Gary Hinman slaying with the Tate LaBianca murders and thus release Bobby. But it didn't happen. Things just seemed to get tighter and tighter. We were undergoing constant indoctrination from Charlie on survival, on how to hide from the police, who from time to time were nosing around, trying to find out what we were up to, and on how to maim and even to kill. Quite a few of the kids with us had no knowledge of the murders already behind us. They still considered us a bunch of anti-establishment young people seeking a better world. Immediately after my arrival at Barker's with my baby, 2 of the girls became frightened by all the talk about survival and killing. They ran away in the middle of the night, and several of us searched unsuccessfully until daylight for them. The girls, meanwhile, had stumbled upon Inyo County Police and asked for protection. The next day came a full-scale raid on the Barker and Myers ranches and our other hideaways out in the wilderness known as Goler Wash. The charges ranged from auto theft to arson. The raid was spread over 3 days, with the police apprehending more of us each day. My baby and I were among those seized the first day. A total of 24 people were arrested, including Charlie. Since I saw those 3 days, from my own perspective, and was aware only of what was going on around me, I've pieced together many of the details of those hours and days from Prosecutor Bugliosi's account, which I have excerpted and paraphrased as follows. On the night of October 9th, officers from the California Highway Patrol, the Inyo County Sheriff's Office, and the National Park Rangers assembled near Barker for a massive ranch on the raid to commence the following morning. At about 4 a.m, as several of the officers were proceeding down one of the draws some distance from the ranch, they spotted 2 men asleep on the ground. Between them was a sawed-off shotgun. The 2, Clem and Randy, were arrested. Though the officers were unaware of it, the pair had been stalking human game. Stephanie and Kitty, the 2 17-year-olds who had fled the previous day. Another man, Soup Spoon, was apprehended on a hill overlooking the ranch. He had been acting as a lookout, but had fallen asleep. There was still another lookout post, a well-disguised dugout, its tin roof hidden by brush and dirt, on a hill south of the ranch. The officers had almost passed it when they saw a girl emerge from the brush, squat, and urinate, then disappear back into the bushes. While 2 officers covered the entrance with their rifles, one climbed above the dugout and dropped a large rock on the tin roof. I was one of the 3 women inside. We all rushed out to be met by pointed guns and handcuffs. Those inside the ranch house, 3 other women, were caught unawares and offered no resistance. Other members of the raiding party surrounded nearby Myers Ranch and arrested 4 women. 2 babies were also found, including mine. A search of the area revealed a number of hidden vehicles, mostly dune buggies, mostly stolen. A mailbag with a .22 Ruger single-shot pistol inside, also stolen. A number of knives, and caches of food, gasoline, and other supplies, Also found were more sleeping bags than people, indicating there might be others. The second phase of the raid occurred 2 days later. A California Highway Patrol officer and 2 park rangers arrived in the area before their support did and were hiding in the brush, awaiting for the others, when they saw 4 males walk from one of the washes to the ranch house and enter. The patrolman spotted a sheriff's deputy from the backup unit approaching in the distance. It was already 6 o'clock, the dusk rapidly becoming dark. Not wanting to risk a gunfight at night, he decided to act. While one of the rangers covered the front of the building, the patrolman drew his gun and moved to the front door, flung it open, and ordered all the occupants to remain still and place their hands on their heads. Arrested were 3 females and 4 men. There was no sign of their leader, Manson. The patrolman decided to recheck the house. Using a candle in the dark, he went into the bathroom. I was forced to move the candle around quite a bit, as it made a very poor light, he said. I lowered the candle toward the hand basin and small cupboard below, and saw long hair hanging out the top of the cupboard, which was partially open. It seemed impossible that a person could get into such a small space. It was later measured at 3 by 1.5 and 1.5 feet. Without the officer saying anything, a figure began to emerge. It was Manson, dressed entirely in buckskin. Another man, an ex-convict, was found in still another part of the house. On arriving in Independence, the county seat, everyone was charged with grand theft auto, arson, and various other offenses. Charlie was fingerprinted, photographed, and booked as Manson, Charles M., a.k.a. also known as Jesus Christ. There wasn't enough evidence to hold many of our group, so in a few days more than a half were released. I was not one of them. After 2 days, I was called out of my cell to talk with 2 detectives about the Gary Hinman murder. They said that Bobby had told them I had been at Gary's house and that they had found a fingerprint of mine. Actually, one of the runaway girls had told them of my involvement. I then made up a story about having been there, but I said that Gary had been beaten up by some black men and that he had been alive when I'd last seen him. "Stop kidding us, Sadie," one of the detectives said. "You killed him." I was suddenly very afraid. I knew this was the end of the road. I then said Bobby and I had been the ones at Gary's, but I insisted I didn't know who had killed him. They didn't believe me. On October 13th, 1969, I was booked on suspicion of murder and flown in a 4-passenger plane to Oxnard, then taken by car to the Sybil Brand Institute, the Women's House of Detention in Los Angeles, which was to be my home for the next 22 months. I wasn't going to have to run anymore, dig holes in the sides of hills, or watch for police airplanes. Deep inside, I was very afraid. Yet, strangely, I was relieved.